Hi, I'm Richard from Sunshine Renewable Energy. I just wanted to check if somebody could say that they can hear me on the other side over there. Hello? Can anyone hear me? Okay, awesome. So, I'm Richard, Sunshine Renewable Energy. We're here tonight to kind of, well, thank you for coming, by the way. We're here tonight to kind of go over heat pumps and a few other kind of things that are kind of associated with heat pumps. I know that like a lot of people have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of options, and what do I go with? So we'll probably cover a lot of that stuff. Also during the session, if you can kind of throw some questions down there. I mean, maybe wait for like 15, 20 minutes because I might answer a lot of those for you while we're going along here. But certainly I encourage the questions. It helps me get through to get the most information out there for you. So starting with heat pumps, we have a couple of kinds. So mini splits, this is our number one seller for sure. We sell a ton of these. They are perfect for retrofitting on anybody with hot water baseboard, whether that be electric boiler, propane boiler, oil boiler, or electric baseboards. This is the retrofit typically for electric baseboards as well. But there's also ducted systems, and that is if you have existing ductwork. Now the ductwork has to be appropriately sized to accommodate the airflow. Because these move way more air than what a forced air furnace currently would do with oil or propane. So yeah, then you've got the ducted. There's a couple of different little variants of the mini splits. This is the floor mount model. So if you really don't, it is my number one complaint that I get from people is I don't like the look of it. So there is kind of an alternative. I mean, it's down on the low versus up high. These work really, really good, by the way. Not quite as efficient. I mean, all of the R&D really goes into these ones. So typically you're going to find that you're going to get the most efficiency and performance out of those. And then also there's like attic ducted systems. So this is an attic ducted system. We usually do these on the second story of a 2-floor house where you got, bedroom. There's, 3 or 4 bedrooms. So essentially it's a little ducted system. We put it in the attic. It vents to all the rooms and does your heating and your cooling from there. We'll kind of go into these a little bit more depth, but just kind of give you the kind of options that are available. And those are really basically the only options when it comes to the heat pumps in your house. So a heat pump. What is a heat pump? How does it work? Essentially a heat pump, the reason that they're so efficient is that they're not actually creating heat, right? They're not creating heat. They're not creating cool. What they're doing is they're taking energy from one place and moving it to another through compressor and refrigerant. It's your refrigerator technology. You put your hand in the fridge, your hand is cool. You put your hand behind the fridge, it's all warm behind there. It's the same process. But what we're doing is we're taking heat out of cold air like outside. So there is always heat in the air pretty much all the time, down to negative 427 degrees Fahrenheit. So these achieve, anywhere between minus, years ago it was 5, 10. Now you're getting minus 20, 30. I mean, really around here, we're only looking for minus 20 at the most. We don't get that cold here. All these are based off of ambient. So your compressor that's outside, which we'll kind of look at in a few minutes, goes to the evaporator inside. A lot of people feel like there's an exchange in between inside and outside. The only exchange is inside the vacuum, which connects the two systems because they work inside of a vacuum. So there's no air that goes from inside to outside. It is refrigerant that flows from the outdoor unit to the indoor coil. You can see, like mini split here, which is kind of like typically, you're looking for rooms of 500 to 1,500 square feet for one of these. They do sizes up to around that. And then the ducted system where you can see there, the coil is just massive, right? That one there could do like a 2,500 square foot house through all the duct work. You can also see kind of here inside on the other side. It's really hard to see, but there's a gigantic blower motor in there. Good ones of these on, up to 15,000 BTUs. They're going to move 500-600 cubic feet per minute out of the good ones on like high fan speed, which is huge. It's a lot of air. Right? It's a lot of air when you imagine that, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This one's doing like, 1,800, 2,000 cubic feet per minute. It is a monster, the blower. So effectively, the refrigerant from the outdoor gets heated or cooled. It comes up to the evaporator, which looks like kind of like a car radiator, right? And that gets warm, and then in behind there you have a fan, and that fan is blowing through the coil, right? And really, when the heat pump's running, you almost want it running all the time. That's when you're going to get the best performance out of a heat pump, especially nowadays with the inverter compressor. And it's another reason why we're achieving such, high coefficient of performance, which is really, how much energy you get out of the machine versus what you put into it. So these get really, really good. They put out, all the time now. They can heat, almost all of the ones that we do now can really heat your house 100% of the time. But it's still not classified as a primary heat. We'll kind of go into that and touch base with that for a few minutes in a minute. So inside your unit, you have your filter, right? That filter has to be cleaned, right? Sometimes we go to people's houses, we open the thing and right, all of the crap comes out. That machine is not working properly. It is not producing the heat that it should. It is not doing it as efficiently as it should. So you do have to take care of your machine. Cleaning filters regularly, number one, right? And then we also do maintenance on them, which is like a cleaning. So you kind of do the filters. What we do is we actually come in, we take the whole casing off of the head. We slide up a bib underneath it, and we actually wash the inside of that coil because it will collect dirt over time. Byproduct of air conditioning is condensation and dehumidification. Well, guess what? Condensation and dirt, it gets pretty nasty over time, especially when you're moving huge volumes of air, collecting lots of dirt, and making lots of moisture. These things on a hot, humid summer day, you could fill a pint glass every like 30 minutes, right? It's coming out constantly. That's how much moisture they can remove, right? The people who run into the most problems with heat pumps, I find, are the ones that turn them on and off all the time, right? I use it today, I don't use it tomorrow. I leave it off for a week, I turn it on for a day. That's where you're gonna run into your most, just like anything. Like you buy a car and you leave it in the garage, you're more likely gonna have problems with it. Anything in life, you just use it. It's meant to be used, right? They really don't use much power, right? The good ones, right? They really don't use much power. You're getting 3 units of energy, sometimes 4 units of energy versus every unit that you put into it. So if you think like a furnace might be, 80, 85, 90, 92 maybe % efficient. Effectively, all of that energy you're getting 4 times out of a heat pump. So great for the environment, all that kind of stuff. You're using, renewable, will be renewable energy down the road. So those are kind of like the basics about the heat pumps. These also get serviced as well. When these drain, they're different because they're in a mechanical room in the basement often. So we have to put what's called a condensate pump in. So basically the water with the air conditioning would fill this little bucket, and then once it's full, there's a float and it goes out, it goes into the laundry or drain, or we'll even pump it outside, because the only time it's actually taking moisture out of the house is when it's air conditioning. It's not doing it during the heating season, right? So couple of things about energy with heat pumps, because heat pumps use electricity. So there are, or can be, some limitations that you might run into when you're putting heat pumps in houses. All right, just gonna grab a sip of water here, sorry. All right, so, houses 35 years plus, I mean, you can see these all the time. We see them all the time. This particular one is 100 amps. You're most likely going to see this in an oil heated house. All right. When you heated with oil, you just didn't need the power. You needed your stove. Maybe you did your hot water and your dryer. There was really nothing else to go at because the oil was carrying all the load. So builders, they put the cheapest thing in. Cheapest thing's 100 amps. Away you go. Everybody's got them. But now we're getting to that point where, I want to put heat pumps in here, let's say, right? So often we can, all right? We can put heat pumps in 100 amp service. I mean, the breaker is like, we can't put anything in here, all right? This thing's a whole mess, right? But we can often get things in. There are some panels that are just so old, they don't make breakers for anymore. There are panels that they don't make anymore, but if you want to buy the breaker, it's a special order, and it could be anywhere between $150 and $500 just for the breaker. It's kind of like when you have one of these, it's time to start thinking, right? What am I going to do with this, right? But anyway, so the 100 amps, you can get the heat pumps. You usually get 2, 3, 4 mini splits in, but not hot water. You can do what's called an add-on into the furnace. So essentially, it's the same. If you have your furnace and you have the ductwork, and this is your oil furnace, let's say, right? What we do is this coil doesn't actually go in here. This is your oil furnace. And then above it, we take this coil and we insert it into your plenum as it is right now. And the oil is the backup, and the heat pump does the heating and the cooling for the house. So that is a possibility. It's kind of on its way out now. Most furnaces are kind of getting older. So you don't want to be doing that to, a 15-year plus furnace, because you're putting a heat pump in something that is on the back nine, essentially. Brand new heat pump. You might have to rip it out, buy new oil, another 25 years of oil. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, right? So 100 amps, oil, you're good. Propane, you're good. But if you want to come off of oil, that's where this really changes almost 100% of the time. We have to go from 100 amp to 200 amp, all right? Your heat pumps will fit in here, but your oil remains. As soon as you ask for the oil to go away, boom, 200 amp service. Because we always have to have a primary heat source. And a primary heat source is an oil furnace, oil boiler, propane furnace, electric baseboard, all the hot water baseboards. All of those are primary heats. All right, a heat pump, a wood stove, a pellet stove, a propane fireplace, not primary heats, none of them. One with the pellet stove and the wood stove, I mean, they have to be manned in order to operate, and you're not always home. Heat pump, similar thing, really. Heat pump breaks down, right? What people sometimes don't realize that, your furnace breaks, call the furnace guy, he comes out, boom, he's got the part on the truck, boom, you're up and running, away he goes. Heat pump different, all right? So many different sizes, so many different models, so many different brands, so many different parts, all right? We'll show you the insides of these, the guts of, you can see kind of the guts there, but they get even deeper than this. That's just an air handler. Excuse me. Service upgrades, because we have to put in the backup heat, and that often now is electric. So when it's heat pump, we're typically looking at electric baseboards. If it's a furnace, right, what happens is that there's actually a heating element that we put in here, right? And that would do the backup heat. The 200 amp service upgrade is required because the backup heat for this and the backup heat for any house over 2,000 square feet even 1,500 square feet, you're talking 80 amps of electricity at least that you're going to need in order to run whatever backup heat that you're going to be putting in there. So that smokes out that 100 amp service every single time. The other thing that you want to think about, and I kind of touched into this a little bit last time, is 100 amps, yes, heat pumps, keeping oil, right? 100 amps, yes, heat pumps. Electric car, no, right? Because that is going to be at least a 30 amp circuit right on there too. So you've already blown your 100 amps with the heat pumps, and now you want an electric car? Well, you're doing 200 amps anyways, right? So 200 amps is going to be big, because if you have oil heat, it's probably like 85% chance at least that you have a 100 amp service. All right. Little touch about generators, right? Because we get a lot of questions about these. Automatic standby generator. This is, power goes out, boom, this comes on, your whole house is going, right? But it's like $15,000 to $20,000 to install one of these, right? So you got to be ready to buy it. It's not cheap, right? The one that we do a lot of is a generator panel, right? So a generator panel is basically a separate panel that isolates itself from the grid. So if you have like your own little pull-up generator, we have to pull permits, and Nova Scotia Power comes to inspect, but essentially we can put whatever you want to run in this panel up to a certain point, of course, not as big as this typically, but can really. I mean, you wouldn't want a neighbor for like 20 miles when you pull up a bigger generator, but anyways. So yeah, you can get heat pump, mini splits. You could probably get like a ducted too, if you had a big enough one. But really, deep freeze, fridge, lights, kitchen plug, internet, TV. Right, those are all little loads. We can fit all of those things in easily. Right, it's really cool. It works really good. And technically, it's the only way you can do it. Everything else would be illegal. So another thing that you may or may not have heard of, or you will over time, I'd imagine, is an electric thermal storage unit. So ETS is a heat-only system, right? It only does heat. It does nothing else, right? Inside of there, you have basically a bank of bricks. Right, and you have bricks on the inside, bricks on the outside, and then a heating element that runs right through the middle. The idea of these is that when you put one of these in your house, you can now qualify for Nova Scotia Power's time of day meter. Right, you may or may not have heard of that, but it is in a lot of places other than here. We have had it here for a long time, but they made you get these, and they still make you get these. In order to get on the time of day meter. So effectively what that does is it takes all of its heat at night and it gets hot inside. It's insulated. It's not going to burn you. And then it gives it off throughout the day, right? It's thermostat driven. Essentially what this does is it monitors the temperature in the room over a couple of days. And then it tells itself how much energy it needs to make it through the next day. It's pretty kind of clever. But very, it's not a lot of moving parts, right? But this can be really effective with mini split heat pumps. So if you're looking at mini split heat pumps, or you heat with electric already, or hot water baseboard, and you're converting over to electric, we've paired them up. Like basements are great for those, right? Because you don't really need air conditioning in the basement. And when you combine these two together, they work together. They're like a powerhouse. So ETS gets you on the time of day meter, and that's Monday to Friday from 11 p.m. until 7 a.m. And then Friday from 11 p.m. until Monday morning at 7 a.m. So all weekends, 100% of the weekends, all the national and provincial holidays, they charge you half price electricity. So the cool thing about that is they charge you half price electricity for everything that is on that meter. So ETS charge at night, bang, half price. Heat pump, right? 300 or 400% efficient. Right, so you're getting 3 or 4 to 1 versus an electric baseboard, which is technically classified as 100% efficient. All right, so you're getting 3 or 4 units, and then the rate goes to 50% off. Right, so now you're getting 6 or 8 to 1, all night long, all weekend long, all year round, right? There are 2 peak periods from December 1st until February 28th. But again, these things are so efficient that when you're on the peak, right, it really isn't as much damage as the increase that you get on the off peak, because they charge you like 1.3 of the rate during those peak periods, which is during the day where your solar gain is coming in and all that kind of stuff. And as soon as boom, the night goes down, half price electricity, heat pumps running, is killing it, right? We've seen people, especially if you don't have like a huge house, let's say you got 600 square feet on the main floor or something like that, even if you have upstairs, put a heat pump there, put an ETS in the basement. If you heat with electric baseboard, your power bill could be $300 to $3,500, if not more, per year. This could almost cut it in half. We've seen it cut it in less than half. If you have a swimming pool and you heat your swimming pool, the ETS will save you $500 a year because you're heating your swimming pool all the time. If you own a pool like me, all the time at night. It only comes on at night, right? That's when you want it to come on. Half price electricity. Electric cars. Again, we're getting into this time of day meter thing again. We're leaning towards this time of day meter. You're going to see it. Although ETS is now, I can almost guarantee you that at some day, time of day meter will be on every house. And cars are going to be a big part of that, right? UK 2030 can't sell a combustion engine anymore, right? That's crazy. The rest of Europe's 2035. I mean, we're talking 9 or 14 years before you can't even buy a gas car anymore. So these are going to come quick. It's going to be rapid deployment, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's definitely something to pay attention to, especially with your power load. Like if you don't have the power, you're going to have to get this. Oh, by the way, so kind of like ballpark figure, 100 amp service to 200 amp, you're talking $3,500 to $4,500. We have to bring the house up to current electrical code. So hardwired smoke detectors, GFI plugs, anything within 3 feet of the sink. Make sure that there's outdoor plug, outdoor light. If you're in an older house, we have to make sure there's a light switch at the top and the bottom of every staircase, because often there's one at the top or at the bottom, not both. So we have to change those things around. And they get pricey as you add those things up, right? Because there's a lot of work involved, a lot of fish and wire, all that kind of stuff, right? And permits and truck fees for Nova Scotia Power, of course, they're pretty expensive. So I'm just going to grab a sip of water here again. All right, so compressors. All right, these are the driving force of a heat pump. All right, this is the brains of the operation. Okay, all your boards, big main boards and everything are all in here. So mini split heat pump, you're looking at these, right? Always. They go big, right? They get up to here. And then your traditional ducted system, right? They've been around for 50 years, right? Not necessarily as heat pumps, but air conditioners for sure. So they've been around for eons. What you're seeing now are these. This is the new Fujitsu ducted heat pump that we have. There's a few other brands out there that have similar, where they're more like the mini split now. All right. They also have a compressor like a mini split now. All right. So it's an inverter. So these things are, they're the hot diggity new thing. And that's the only way down the road that you'll most likely see heat pumps going forward over the next 5 to 10 years. But these are awesome. All right. They heat 100% of the time again. Right. But not that it can be your primary heat. We still have to put that electric coil in there to back up. Because again, if this breaks down, I think I forgot to touch base on that. If this breaks down, I can't fix it today. I'm not fixing it today. Ever. Right? Ever really. Because often I have to come out and find out what the problem is. And I do not carry the parts. There's 1,000 parts that I have to carry a tractor trailer around with me in order to do it. So we have to go out and find out what the problem is. Then we have to come back and we have to order the part. We have to pick up the part. then we have to set time for us to come back and fix the part, right? If it's the coldest week of the year, you're down a week, right? That's all there is to it. Doesn't matter what heat pump company you go to. Nobody can claim, like bang service. It just can't be done. I've tried, it just can't. I've thought about carrying parts, but I mean, the parts just can't be done. Anyways. So that's why you need that primary heat. So another thing that I like to touch base on is kind of like, because there's so many options out there now, right? And there's so many brands. It's crazy, right? I know for a fact that I could get my own heat pump, and they would put my face on it, and they call it whatever I wanted, right? If I was to commit to like, 50 or 100, right? I could do that, right? That's what this is right here. This is not, I never did it, but this is like, 70, 80% of the heat pumps out there, this is what you're buying, all right? It is cheap. It is nasty. It does not last. It's super flaky, all right? And I kind of did this as a comparison because this is a used unit. This was one that was defective, right? Which they replaced for free, all right? Yeah, that's 6 years down the road, mind you. Okay, so that is a Fujitsu, all right? Everything is encased. Everything is protected. The only thing accessible are the parts that you may need to service. It's, the blanket, I've lost the blanket, but the blanket is like thick rubber and, like the sound is so much better. The quality is so much better. The coil, right? Like these are the same size unit, right? The coil is huge. This is where all your heat and everything, and where your cooling is dumped, right? This is a really thin, cheap. It's just cheap. I can buy those for like $600, $800 tops, all right? I paid 3 times that for a Fujitsu, right? So there's a reason that you can buy a heat pump for $2,500. I won't sell them. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to ruin my business, right? I sell these. Yes, you're going to pay more, but yes, I'm going to stand behind you. These come with a 12-year parts, 10-year labor warranty, all right? We do, from years 2 to 10, have a deductible. If there's something that goes wrong with that from years 2 to 10, there's a $149 call-out fee. I mean, it's nothing, right? But for the whole 12 years, all the parts are covered on that machine, all right? This machine here, it's supposed to go in the bin. It was like 4.5 years old. Guess what? No parts. Can't buy the parts. Right? Can't find the parts. Now you got to buy $2,500. And now you're $4,500. You're $6,500 to finally get to a good heat pump. Don't waste your time, people. I beg you. It's just, we like literally nowadays, right? And this is something else. Like we've installed a lot of heat pumps over the years. We're kind of creeping up to around that 10,000 mark. And to this day, right, 65% of my service calls are machines that we never even installed, right? That's huge, right? It's huge. It's just unreal, right? And most of those machines look just like this, right? And what happens to them? Rip them out, put them in a good one, right? And they realize, oh, okay. Yeah, that wasn't a heat pump. That's a heat pump. All right. So a quick thing before I jump into questions. I got 2 things actually. Efficiency and heat pumps. All right. So if you have a split entry home, bungalow, and your hot water baseboard or electric baseboard, and you're doing the mini split, and you've got 2 floors, do 2 heat pumps. All right, you can buy 1 compressor and you can have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heads. But this is 30% more efficient. This kills it compared to it. All right. And when you're talking 2 heat pumps, the difference of buying 1 with 2 or 2 separates, I mean, you're talking like $800. If you've got, 1,200 square feet up and 800 square feet down, having 2 heat pumps, I mean, it could save you $500 a year, maybe more. Could be a little bit less, but I mean, it's significant enough that within a couple of years, the difference that you've paid up front has paid itself off. Not only that, these, right, are independent from each other. All right, so if one breaks down, the other one still works. If you want to heat with one and cool with the other, you can do that here. You cannot do that on a dual zone or a multi-zone. The other thing is that, let's say, worst case scenario, this thing dies on year 13 and day 1, right? The other one could last another 10 years. You're only replacing half the system, right? All of these things long-term, like these are the things, I even often, in some houses, I'll try and people to get, 2 or 3 or whatever compressors, depending on the size of the house. But if you're really kind of limited for space and we can only get away with 2 compressors, this one has to go on the main floor. Main floor, always single zone, always, in my opinion, because it is the biggest space. That's where all your heat loss occurs. That's where your ceiling is. That's where your big windows are. That's where all of your exposed walls are. So you want that to be the most efficient, right? It just makes sense, right? Another thing as well is that if you have a 2-story house, right, and you kind of have open plan, these things really do rely on open plan. This thing here will basically heat upstairs almost the entire winter, right? So you're whacking 2 floors from one heat pump, right? It can be huge in those scenarios, right? On really cold days, yeah, you're most likely going to need some boost from something, right? But this is going to carry a lot of the load, right? It's huge. I know because I've been doing this for so long and we've done so many and I get so much feedback. Some people say, I don't even turn, if they have a heat pump upstairs, I don't even turn my heat pump on upstairs, right? The one downstairs does it. Well, why don't you make that one the most efficient? Because that is carrying 2 floors from one heat pump, right? And then quickly onto here, because this is a thing that kind of, there are some differing opinions on this scenario. There's a competitor that wrote an article this year, absolutely cursing these things. But this is the way to go, right? This is an attic ducted system if you have a 2-story house, right? If you put one of the mini splits in a bedroom, right? The smallest this unit will go, this one, I think 6,000 is the smallest that I've really heard of residentially for a head. Your typical bedroom needs 1.5, needs 1.5 of that. It needs next to nothing compared to what the actual head is. So almost 100% of the time when you put one of these into a bedroom, it's oversized, right? It's no good for a heat pump, right? I know they have inverters in them and people are blah, 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 but really it's no good. It's short cycling. It never even gets to go to a defrost cycle because it's just shutting off and off all the time. So you're going to have problems with this down the road, 1, right? Number 2, this is going in your head, in your bedroom. So that fan is in your bedroom. The louvers are in your bedroom, right? The noise is in your bedroom, okay? They're quiet, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing going on when the lights go out, right? Everything, you hear everything. And 10 years down the road, I guarantee you. I have one in my bedroom. I'm changing over to one of these next year, and I can hear it. Right? It's like 2 feet from my head, so I have no choice. I can't not hear it. This, all right, is in your attic. It is sized for the entire floor, so it's properly sized. All right. Yes, it's in the attic. Yes, it's cold in the attic. Yes, it's hot in the attic, but we do insulate everything. So the whole casing in there is all insulated from the inside. The ductwork is rigid as far as we can, all right, as far as we can on a run, and then flex right at the end, right, a little bit of a bend to dampen sound. But that air is flowing through real fast. It's not really having a whole lot of time to lose a whole lot. So the argument is you spend $3,000 or $4,000 to put a heat pump in a bedroom, and it's only going to do the bedroom, right? Only, right? It doesn't go out the door, turn, go through the door, turn, go into the closet. They just don't work that way, right? They just don't, right? This is size for the floor. Boom, into the bedroom. Boom, into the bedroom. Boom, into the bedroom. And then it sucks back to the middle through return. So this is the return right here. So essentially, it's all closed in. There's nothing coming out. It goes in the return, through the machine, out the leads, into the rooms, right? Draining, right? The other argument I get is draining. Okay, so there's a hard pipe drain right there. It kind of runs below the machine, right? That drain there runs, I don't know, 50 feet back into the warehouse, basically, right? It's rigid. Guess what? We have to come and check your machine every year. We're going to check that drain, right? We're going to make sure that it's not going to leak. Can it leak? Absolutely, it can leak. It can leak, right? But the argument that I get from people is, well, it's above my ceiling. What happens if it leaks? Well, we're going to know real quick if it is a leak, right? The most damage I've ever seen heat pumps do are these guys right here, all right? Because what happens is that comes out. It's going on the wall. Right? Let's say a spider climbs up into the drain outside. And it backs up and it comes in, but it doesn't come in above the wall. It comes in behind the wall, right? And it goes down, right? And it's on the top floor. It goes down to floor 2, then down to floor 3. You know, these can be way more dangerous, right? That leaks, right? Within an hour, you're like drip, 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 because it's got nowhere to go but down. Right? It's not going to go across the roof over to the end, then start creeping down the wall, right? It just doesn't do that. Oh, and the last thing before I start looking at the questions is hot water. So, heat pump, hot water tank, all right? Essentially same technology. We got a heat pump, we got a hot water tank. We're doing the same thing. These can have pipes on them so that we can pipe the exhaust outside. Dump it into the exhaust of an HRV, things like that. There are things that we can do here, but you know, it's very expensive. If you don't have at least 4 people in your home, don't waste your time. All right. If you are looking for the permanent solution, we do this as a Ream Marathon tank. It has R20 insulation in it. Right. It comes with a lifetime warranty. It's the last tank you'll ever buy. Essentially, there's no metal inside of it except for the elements, which are replaceable. Really the actual tank itself cannot corrode. All right, so questions. I am going to start from the top here. Derek, the reported COP, I don't have them all off the top of my head. If you want to email me, I can definitely get you the information on that. Routine cleanings. So routine cleanings, right? You can get away every 2 years if you really want to push it. But the only way to get there is to regularly clean the filters. All right, that's the only way to get to 2 years. Anything after 2 years, I mean, geez, it's a $5,000 machine. Well, let's come out and have a look at it and make sure there's nothing wrong with it. Over time, there's just no question. The amount of airflow that this thing has, it's going to collect dirt, right? It's going to collect dirt on the coil. And the efficiency of the heat pump is the conduction between the metal and the air, not layers and layers and layers and layers of dirt to metal, then the air, right? So kind of makes sense anyways. Yeah. Every time I get that air exchanger one, the air exchanger, no, it's definitely, it's definitely not. So your air exchanger, right? A totally different system, right? Sometimes you can see them incorporated into the ductwork of a ducted system, but that's because the ductwork is all solid steel. It's very big. This stuff, it's all small flex pipe. It can't carry the volumes of air that you need. Like, if you have a furnace now and you can imagine your furnace comes on, whoosh, right? And the heat, like 10 minutes, boom, your heat's on, right? Heat pump's different. Heat pump doesn't whack out the heat like a furnace or a hot water baseboard, an oil or electric baseboard. They get super hot. You touch them, it's like, Jesus, yeah, it's hot. Heat pump is like warm all the time. right? It just keeps going and going and blows and blows and blows and blows. And then that's where that inverter kicks in again, right? So the analogy I always use with people is the inverter technology. This, 100% off, 100% off. You imagine if you're, in there in traffic in the city and you're boom, you're gang on, and then boom, you're on the brakes, and boom, you're on the brakes. That's the way these things always work. This one here is like you get out on the highway, right? And in a modern car, I mean, some of these cars nowadays have 8-speed transmission, right? So you can do 140 kilometers down the road, and you're only doing like 1,800 RPM, right? Because it's gotten into that lowest gear, right? It's gotten into that lowest gear. It's running on the lowest draw. I mean, those, like a 12,000 BTU Fujitsu, right? Or pretty much 12,000 BTU of anything else. It's a 15 amp 2-pole breaker. I mean, it's nothing. Your electric heat circuit for one circuit is bigger than what a heat pump circuit is. And a heat pump can cover 3 circuits, right? So again, kind of like do the math, right? It just takes nothing for these things really, right? And the more, and they just get better. I mean, this one here has kind of like been rocking for 5 years now, but man, when it came out, boom, it was, it is really good machine anyways. So I am Fujitsu, right? I do LG as well. This one often comes in handy because as you can see, it's a tiny little head, right? So if you got to get over a window or over a door or in a corner, like this one here, you have a little bit more flexibility with. These have a bigger head. The reason they have a bigger heat exchange. They collect more heat. They distribute more heat. They have a bigger fan, right? And again, right, this, right, is like 2/3 the cost of one of these for me, right? So you can see why that there would be a jump. I mean, I think it's an $800 jump on a 12,000 BTU between these two. One is warranty, quality, efficiency, size, all that kind of stuff. That's where the money comes in, right? But LG, good brand, going to be kind of like your budget-friendly brand, right? Mitsubishi, Daikin, Japanese is like that's the good thing about the Japanese brands, from what I can see so far, is that if they're going to let you sell their product, they're going to check you out before they let you sell it, right? So you're kind of vetted, right? I can't sell Mitsubishi, I can't sell Daikin, nor they can sell Fujitsu, right? So we're kind of like car dealerships, right? And we're like, we're like Ferrari, Maserati, right? All that kind of stuff. But the big thing is that the other thing is that Fujitsu, Mitsubishi, Daikin, LG, right? All locally distributed here. All right. These, again, I could have the Richard Ross container load, right? And that's the only container load that ever makes it into this country, right? When that container load comes over, not one part on that ship. All right. So breaks down. Hey, what about my part? Right. There's brands out there now where you call us up and say, hey, I got one of these. Right. I'm not going to say anything bad about anybody, but it can't be fixed. Sorry, but it's only 3 years old. Sorry, doesn't have any parts no more. We can come and rip it out for you if you want and replace it with one that will have parts after 3 years. But somebody took you for a run anyways. So yes, we are in Efficiency Nova Scotia's rebate program. Rebates are on the mini split side, $200 per ton, right? So for every 12,000 BTUs, you will get $200 if you don't get an energy audit. You could get an energy audit, right? And they're $100. And then they'll give you $300 per ton. So depending on how many units you're getting in, it can be attractive to get that audit done, especially if you're doing insulation. Insulation's a no-brainer. If you don't have insulation in your attic, just get it. They pay for 50% of it, right? It returns itself in like 18 months, 100% of the time, pretty much. Price of oil, all the time I get that question. And I tell you what, every year it's a different answer. It's just crazy, right? Oil, up, down, up, right? It's just nuts. So I've kind of over the years, and funnily enough, Nova Scotia Power, a guy from Nova Scotia Power has been kind of working on this, how does it work? And, and he's like, I finally figured it out, right? What the balance is between a price of oil and a heat pump. And I said, I could have told you that because I've got so many customers who just heard it so many times. I just kind of, figured it out on my own. And he goes, well, what's your number? I said, 70 cents a liter. He had 68.8, right? So that's kind of like where your measure is. So you're paying 70 cents a liter of oil, which I think you basically are right now. You're going to break even with heat pump, all right? There's no savings to be had, all right? The benefit of the heat pump, though, and I see this all the time, and I get the feedback all the time, is every time pretty much we put a heat pump in, almost all the time, and you can ask all of your friends and you can ask around, and like unless they've had a bad experience, which there are plenty of, they always said, I wish I had done it sooner, right? Very rarely do they say, damn, I really should never have done that. Right? It's extremely rare. I mean, our customers sometimes can be a challenge, just like sometimes contractors can, but really very little people that are disappointed with their purchase. Also, it's a great investment for your house. Guess what? This is the way it's going. All right. In the next 10, 15 years, pretty much everybody is going to be off oil, like residentially, commercially. I mean, we're just pushing so hard to get there. And, you could have enjoyed this for all that time, right? Gotten the air conditioning, gotten the nice heat, because the heating is nicer. And the air conditioning, man, I wouldn't live anywhere without air conditioning. I wouldn't even go anywhere without air conditioning. So it's a great investment for your house. If you go and sell your house, guess what? New buyer is going to love it. New buyer is going to love it. You come into the house and you come into your house, right? I mean, maybe not in this market because it's absolutely nuts. But you come into the house and anybody, under 40 looks at one of those and goes, what the hell is that? Right? What is that? Right? Never seen one of those before. Right? Because they're just old. Right? It's time to move. 25 years maximum life expectancy of anything in your house. Right? Roof. Right? Electrical. Right? Any kind of appliances. It's sometimes it's time to make the investment. Anyways. So attic system on a slab, all right? So yeah, right? Again, and I kind of maybe didn't really get into this. I kind of touched base on it. I mean, when you're doing this on the second floor of a house, right? This is not about heating efficiency, all right? It doesn't matter if you're putting that in a bedroom, right? It's not about heating efficiency, right? It's about one thing, air conditioning. It's the only thing it's about. Doesn't matter. Because if you have a heat pump on the main floor and it's a 2-story house, often that heat's going to go upstairs, right? So this really doesn't matter apart from air conditioning, right? And if you want to spend $4,000 to do one room, right, or $7,000 to do 4, right, this makes more sense, right? This is quieter. This is nicer. This is more even. This is more comfortable. This is more dehumidification, which is really what you're looking for when you're talking about air conditioning. These suck at dehumidifying in a bedroom because they're off all the time. The only way you can get air conditioning and dehumidification at the same time is by running it consistently. That coil has to be cold. There has to be air flowing through that coil for that water to condense on the coil. If it's not blowing and if it's not running, there's no condensation, there's no dehumidification. You'll actually, everybody has been in this situation before. Laying in bed, I mean, it could be like often like Florida or, in a hotel room, with those little kind of air conditioners that sit in the wall. And you're laying in bed and your skin is cold, right? But it's all wet, right? It's all wet and kind of sticky. Well, that's exactly what you get when you have a cold, humid room, right? The room is cold, it makes your skin cold. Guess where the moisture is going to want to go? To your skin, right? Every time to your skin. This will take it out. This will drain it out. This will do every room. You can close all the bedroom doors, right? Win, 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 win. Right? Yes, you can mix, right? Mix these with ducted systems all the time, right? Ideal is 1, 2, 3 compressors if you're also doing the basement, right? If you're limited for space, 1 for the main floor. Always you keep going back. 1 for the main floor. 1 for the main floor, right? And then you could connect basement and attic onto 1 compressor because again, upstairs doesn't matter. It's not about efficiency, right? It's about air conditioning. Okay. Basement, again, really not as much about efficiency. I mean, if you don't have your basement insulated, like get it done, right? It only makes sense, right? But basement below grade, right? Small, tiny windows, right? No windows, no heat loss, right? So no attic above. So you actually, like when you're sizing a heat pump, traditionally, let's say you size 12,000 BTUs for the main floor. Technically, downstairs only needs a 6. They usually say roughly about half what you would put in the basement. So really the need is less. All right, the need is on the main floor. All your heat loss, your attic, second floor above that's open to the staircase, right? All these things. Anyways. So if you have electric baseboard, right, and savings-wise, man, it could be amazing, right? If you're doing a single zone heat pump, right, and again, I can only testify really to the Fujitsu and the LG, all right? If it's a decently insulated home, and this is another thing, if you're doing the same, right? I often, because I run the Facebook page, I get all kinds of people, I don't like my heat pump, it charged me more money and it cost me another, and it didn't save as much as I said. But I can testify to this, that I do this every year, go back out to houses who aren't necessarily happy with what they were doing, with what the heat pump results are. And you walk into the house, you open the door, it's like, whoa, right? It's like 26 degrees in here, right? What's going on, right? Guess what? If you heated it to 15 with your electric baseboard and you heat it to 26 with a heat pump, no savings. Sorry, no savings, right? It just doesn't work. The other one that I run into a lot, right, which is kind of tragic, is that, some people that just can't afford to heat their house, right? So they live in like a room, right, a living room, and then they'll jump into the kitchen to get some food and they'll jump back into the living room. And they'll really only heat that room. And then they get a heat pump. And they're like, because I want to live in more of my house. Great, live in more of your house, right? But if you're heating 200 square feet before and now you're heating 800 square feet, guess what? No savings. No savings. Can't be done, right? It just can't be done. So given those scenarios, if you're doing same, if you're doing a good heat pump single zone, around $1 a square foot, right? Around $1 a square foot is what you can kind of roughly expect. You throw an ETS into the mix, you get 125, right? So again, this is just like experience. We get feedback all the time, and we get people who aren't using their heat pumps properly. That's another major problem. All right, is that if you're not running this thing properly, or if I actually had a friend who bought a heat pump from me, or a friend of a friend. And I'm sitting there on Facebook one night, and she puts on, I don't like my heat pump, blah, blah, blah. Call her up, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, seriously, like, I don't even understand why you would say that on Facebook in the first place. And she goes, yeah, I know. It didn't work out. I'm like, really? What's going on? I know you have electric baseboard. There's absolutely no way that this cannot be working. She goes, yeah. How often do you use it? Oh, here and there. How often do you use it? I've had it on like 8 times. It was like 18 months later, right? Okay. All right, there you go. Happy days. Can a heat pump be installed in townhouse? Yes. All right. Is it condo? If it's condo, you really have to make sure that you get approval beforehand. But if you look over at this one over here, so if you don't have the room on that back wall to put the heat pump, right? Often what we can do is we can put it on the side, all right? This is kind of an example. So traditionally the heat pump's on the wall, the lines come out here and they go down, right? Preferably on an outside wall so we can get the water right out. But they also can have the lines come out to the right or out to the left, right? But if we're doing it on an inside corner wall, you are gonna have a little bit of this sticking out because I can't butt that right into the corner. Because if I ever have to service it, I have to be able to get in there, get a screwdriver in. We have to be able to fix them if they break, right? So can they go on an inside wall? Yes. Try and keep it to the outside wall if you can. There are other ways, right? So this kind of gives you, it's a good question. This kind of gives you an example, all right? So there's a heat pump, right? It's technically on an inside wall, right? And then below here, we have what's called a condensate pump, right? So anytime that I can't go out and straight down or out on a grade of some sort, right? I have to put a condensate pump in. Similar to this, right? And this trap fills up with water, there's a float, and then it'll push it out. Yes, but no, I don't, try and avoid those at all costs. One, they're not cheap. I think to install one, it's about $350. That kind anyways. Those ones are a little bit cheaper. But, every so often you hear, right? And, again, on that hot summer day, this can move. A pint glass every 30 minutes. You're filling that every 10, right? Right? Sounds like a fish tank, right? Fish tank pump. Have you ever heard one of them? Do you need a fully open floor plan? Not fully open, all right, but not door, room door, right? Like upstairs in the bedrooms on a 2-story house. It can sometimes actually though. So if you have the staircase that comes up the outside of the house and then you kind of have a landing here and it's like bedroom, and you put a heat pump up on the top of the staircase, boom, right at the bedrooms. Bedroom doors have to be open, but that can work. But often we can find a kind of strategically place it so that, it's on, let's say it's on this wall here, and you've kind of got a double door off to the side. I mean, single doors are just garbage for heat pumps. Double doors can be pretty good. And you get that energy through the door, and it will often, I mean, we always have to kind of look at the house in order to properly assess anyways, so I can't really say for sure. But 800 square feet sounds like you're talking a 9 or a 12,000 BTU anyways. If it's choppy and it's really choppy, you want to go smaller, right? You don't want to go bigger. Bigger is not better with a heat pump, all right? Just like this kind of like that bedroom analogy. It's too big for the bedroom, shuts off all the time, doesn't do what it's supposed to do, can't spread as far, can't heat as much, can't remove much moisture, right? So those are the things that we're really always thinking about, right? So the attic model, not much. I mean, as long it needs to be this high, right? It's for the guys to get up there and work. They get up there and they work as long as they can move around, right? That system can go, right? Any other questions? Oh, is one less heat pump less expensive than another? I mean, yeah. I mean, again, I can sell these for typical 12,000 BTU on a Fujitsu, I think is $4,400, right? But I can sell heat pumps for as low as $2,500. I still make the same amount of money both ways, right? But I won't be in business if I sell those heat pumps. And all the guys that sell those heat pumps are not in business today, all right? It just doesn't work. I even tried it at first and immediately like said, this isn't going to work. So I think that's it. Thank you for attending. We are going to be sending out a link for a heat pump giveaway. We're going to do that tomorrow. We'll try and get it out before the afternoon. We'll most likely be doing a draw on Monday. We will announce to everybody once we have contacted the winner, because we don't announce right away, because if the winner is out of town, guess what? We go back to the draw, all right? Because this is for HRM, or within an hour of Dartmouth, roughly, is our service area. So if somebody Cape Breton wins, guess what? We're gonna go back to the draw. So thank you very much for attending. Subscribe to our channel if you get a chance, because we are going to be running more of these. We're going to be getting more into depth with some of these things later on down the road. So if you had any questions or wanted to learn a little bit more, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Signing off. Have a great night.